I know the world is constantly rushing. Notifications ping, meetings overlap, and there's barely time to breathe. So if you're here, even just for a few seconds, thank you. I'm not telling this story because I want attention. I'm telling it because I was erased, and I need someone to know I existed. Just maybe, you'll see a small piece of yourself in these words. And if you do, a quiet touch on the like button would mean the world to someone still learning how to be seen. They called it a celebration of legacy. Walnut-paneled walls, champagne on silver trays. Every cousin in designer black, pretending grief. But I was only here because of the letter Grandma had left me. The official will reading was scheduled at 2 p.m. sharp. Inside the courthouse, polished and cold, with portraits of dead judges glaring down from every wall. My adoptive mother wore her favorite silk scarf, emerald green, like always, and stood beside my sister Caitlin, like they were one person. The attorney read off bequests, antique brooches, the summer cottage in Maine, the Roth ERA, laughter here and there, tight smiles. Then he paused. Now, regarding the remainder of the estate. He looked at me, briefly, then at the others. There's been an update, based on a recently submitted paternity test. My spine straightened. I hadn't submitted anything. He continued. It appears, based on conclusive results, that Miss Eliza Monroe is not the biological daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Monroe. The room inhaled. My mother's voice sliced through it. She's not one of us. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I just sat there, watching my name collapse in a dozen people's minds like a bad investment. The judge didn't raise his eyes, but he gestured to the bailiff, who brought forward a small sealed envelope. It was thick. Handwritten initials marked the seal. And suddenly, I wasn't sure whose name would be inside. I didn't open the envelope. Not yet. Not while their stares crawled across my skin like ants. Not while my mother clutched her pearls like I had stolen something sacred. Not while Caitlin leaned back in her chair, lips curling, relieved that her throne had been secured. I've always known I didn't belong. Even as a child, I sensed it. There was something about the way my mother corrected me. Don't stand like that. Don't laugh so loudly. It's not becoming. You should really try to look more like Caitlin. She's graceful. Caitlin danced. I drew. She wore pearls. I wore graphite under my fingernails. She had a glow. I had questions. And they made sure I always felt the weight of that difference. At 8 years old, I gave her a painting I made in art class. 3 children holding hands under a golden tree. I'd drawn myself in the middle. She looked at it, then said, "Trees don't come in gold? It looks odd." I still remember the way she slid it into the trash drawer. Not even the actual bin, just the drawer that held coffee grounds and used paper towels. Caitlin had given her a macaroni collage the same week. It was framed by Sunday. Dad didn't say much, ever. But once, when I asked him what my name meant, he said, "Eliza, it doesn't mean anything. Just a name your mother liked." But Caitlin's name? He told that story every Christmas. Caitlin was the name of your great-grandmother, a true Monroe matriarch. Even then, I started to wonder. I kept a box in my closet, a small one. Inside were scraps of paper, a photo with my head cropped out, a birthday card addressed to Liza instead of Eliza, the receipt from a doctor's office where they listed me as Foster, and the science fair medal I won that they forgot to attend. Maybe that's why I didn't cry when they said I wasn't theirs. Part of me had already let go of the idea. The other part? It waited. The week after the will reading, I didn't speak to anyone. Not Jenna, my best friend since middle school. Not Mr. Clemens, the bookstore owner who always saved me the last copy of poetry magazines. Not even the woman who came to my apartment every Friday to clean. I just left her money and a thank you note. Instead, I started tracing the lines backward. There had always been gaps. Tiny, hairline fractures in the porcelain lie my parents built around me. I remembered a phone number I once found scribbled on the back of a delivery slip. I dialed it. A woman answered. "Clara?" she said before I even spoke. That wasn't my name. Another time, when I was 16, I got a scholarship invitation in the mail. I told my mother, excited. She paused. Oh, it must be a mistake. That school isn't for us. She didn't mean financially. She meant me. I remembered how mail for Clara Avery kept appearing at our address, long after I'd already lived there for over a decade. When I asked about it once, Dad just mumbled, "Old tenant. Ignore it." I did, until now. I went to the local archives downtown. It smelled like wet paper and linoleum glue. I asked the attendant, an old man with wild eyebrows, if he could check records for Clara Avery. When he looked it up, he squinted. She was placed in temporary guardianship with the Monroes in 2006. Biological father deceased. Mother's file is sealed. Huh. Interesting. He leaned in. That's you, isn't it? I didn't answer. Because by then, I was starting to suspect it was true. That they hadn't adopted me out of compassion. They'd taken me out of convenience, and then spent the next 15 years pretending I was a footnote in someone else's story. But someone remembered me, because that envelope, the one from the courtroom, was not sealed by my mother, or my father, or even Caitlin. It was signed with initials I hadn't seen before. J.A., and inside was a key. It was a small brass key, cold and unmarked, taped to the inside of a folded card that simply read, "If you found this, then they've already turned you away. Go to P.O. Box 423. He wanted you to know." J.A. The handwriting was strong, slanted, male. I held it like it might crumble if I breathed too hard. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every moment they tried to make me forget myself. Every time I was corrected, redirected, made smaller, like they'd been rehearsing for this ending since the beginning. By morning, I was outside the old downtown post office. A silver-haired clerk behind bulletproof glass looked up when I handed her the key. Her eyes narrowed. "You're Eliza?" I nodded. She didn't ask for ID. She just disappeared behind a door and returned with a thick envelope wrapped in brown paper and string. It felt heavy, sacred. Back at my apartment, I opened it on the kitchen table like it was a crime scene. Inside was a letter on embossed stationery. James Avery, attorney at law. And underneath that, a second envelope. The name on it, Eliza Ainsley. Ainsley, not Monroe. My hands trembled. The attorney's letter explained that my biological father, Dr. Nathaniel Ainsley, had written a personal statement and legal directive before his death. The Monroes had been listed as temporary guardians pending legal transition. But somehow, that transition never came. The last line chilled me. The Monroes declined to proceed with formal adoption. Instead, they opted for legal guardianship without inheritance rights to protect their estate from future claims. So, they never saw me as one of them, not even on paper. But Nathaniel Ainsley had, because in the second envelope was a handwritten letter, dated 3 weeks before his death. "My dear Eliza, I don't know if this will ever reach you, but if it does, I want you to know. I fought for you. They told me I wasn't stable, that my work in the Congo made me unfit. But I loved you. God, I loved you." He wrote about my laugh, my curls, the way I clutched his stethoscope and called it a neck horn. He said he was proud of me, and that he left me everything. My breath caught, not in anger, but in recognition. For the first time, someone saw me, not as a burden, not as a shadow of Caitlin, but as a person. And in that moment, I knew. I was going to take back my name. I didn't call ahead, didn't announce myself, didn't give them time to rehearse another lie. I just showed up. The Monroes' estate sat at the end of Wisteria Lane, 2 acres of symmetry, trimmed hedges, and shallow roots. A place built to look like family, but echo like a museum. I stepped out of the car in silence. My flats crunched across the gravel. The front door opened before I knocked. It was Caitlin. Her eyes widened, not with surprise, but with calculation. "Eliza," she said, drawing out the syllables like they were foreign. "Didn't expect you." "I'm not here for expectations," I said. "I'm here for answers." Inside, Nothing had changed. Same portraits, same beige silence, same scent of eucalyptus and unsaid things. Mother was in the parlor, rearranging orchids that didn't need arranging. Father stood by the fireplace, staring into a flame that had gone out. I stood in the doorway. No hug, no greeting. Just that tight smile from Mother, the one she used at church when she wanted people to believe we were whole. "You've caused quite the stir," she said. "Good," I replied. "Stagnant water stinks." Caitlin let out a short laugh. Mother glared. I set the letter on the coffee table. They stared at it like it might explode. "Where did you get this?" Father asked, his voice lower than I remembered. "From the man who actually wanted me," I said. Silence. Caitlin folded her arms. "So what now? You want money?" "No," I said, not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. "I want to see your faces when the court confirms that you lied." Father stepped forward. "You were safe here, federal, housed and erased," I replied. "Don't forget that part." Mother sat down, hands trembling as she reached for the letter, but I pulled it back. "You've read enough of my life without permission." I didn't come for their approval. I came because I was done being a ghost. They didn't know it yet. But their story was about to be rewritten. The courtroom wasn't as full this time. Just the judge, the estate attorney, the Monroes, and me. I wore navy blue, not black, not mourning, not angry, just present. The air buzzed with formality, but I barely noticed. All I could feel was the sealed envelope in my lap, warming slowly in my hands. The judge cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the documents submitted by Miss Ainsley," he began. He used my real name. First time I'd heard it aloud. Eliza Ainsley. DNA results confirm a biological relationship between the late Dr. Nathaniel Ainsley and Miss Eliza Ainsley. Furthermore, a valid notarized directive, signed by Dr. Ainsley and witnessed by attorney James Avery, states his intent to transfer full estate and intellectual property rights to his daughter. Caitlin's mouth dropped open. Father sat motionless, like a statue cracked down the spine. Mother whispered, "This can't be happening." But it was, the judge continued. "Given the circumstances, and in accordance with state law, Miss Ainsley is now the sole legal heir to Dr. Ainsley's estate, including property, research patents, and any undistributed trust funds, effective immediately." I didn't smile. This wasn't about winning. This was about returning to myself. The attorney approached the bench and opened a small black box. Inside was a flash drive. "A message from Dr. Ainsley, recorded 2 months before his passing," he explained. The judge nodded. The screen behind us flickered to life, and there he was. He looked tired, but kind. His voice warm, with an accent I hadn't heard since childhood. "Eliza, if you're watching this, they didn't want you to know who you are. But I did. I never forgot you, not for one day. I left you my work, not to burden you, but because I believe you will do more with it than I ever could. You were always curious, always questioning. You are my legacy, not my estate. You." When the screen faded, there was no applause, no outcry. Just breathe. My breath. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being handed someone else's crumbs. I was being given space, to grow, to rebuild, to be. The moment the video ended, the room didn't erupt. It curdled, like sour milk on a hot counter. Caitlin stood first, her voice sharp. "This is manipulation. That man was never your father. He was a stranger. We're the ones who raised you." Mother flinched, but didn't speak. I turned to her. "Did you ever love me?" It came out quieter than I intended. She looked at her hands. "I gave you a home." "That's not love," I said. "That's logistics." Father stepped in then, his tie loosened like truth was strangling him. "You don't understand what it's like to take in someone out of guilt and have her become a reminder." "A reminder of what?" I asked. He hesitated. "Of everything we weren't," he said. Caitlin scoffed. "She's not even grateful. We gave her a life." "You gave me a lie," I replied. My voice didn't shake. In the corner, Grandma's brother, Uncle Martin, cleared his throat. "Actually," he said, holding a yellowed envelope, "I think it's time someone told the truth." He walked forward slowly and handed it to me. "It was meant for you. Your mother intercepted it, years ago." Inside was another letter, from Dr. Ainsley, addressed directly to me. It was dated nearly 15 years ago. He'd tried to get custody. He'd written every month. He never stopped trying. They just never gave them to me. Mother turned pale. "I was protecting you." "No," I said. "You were protecting yourself?" Caitlin snapped. "So now what? You cut us off?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "You cut me off the moment you decided I didn't count." No screaming, no courtroom drama, just truth and silence. The kind that follows a door clicking shut. I didn't go back to that house again. Didn't respond to Caitlin's texts, half angry, half pleading. Didn't answer when Mother called from a private number. There was nothing left to clarify. I had heard everything I needed in that courtroom. I was not loved in silence. I was tolerated in convenience. And now, I was done performing. A week later, I mailed them each a small envelope. No note, no message. Just a photo. Me, standing in front of the Ainsley Foundation, its newly unveiled plaque glinting beneath the sunrise sky. Underneath my name, founder and director. In honor of the ones they tried to erase. No vengeance, no rage, just the undeniable presence of a person they no longer controlled. When people asked why I didn't press charges, I answered simply, "Because I'm no longer trying to punish them. I'm just not carrying them with me." I didn't want revenge. I wanted release. And I got it. I stopped measuring my worth through their absence. Stopped pretending a silence was the same as safety. And in that freedom, I felt something I hadn't known in years. Space. To exist. To breathe. To not explain myself. One morning, while sorting through the last of the legal boxes, I found my old science notebook, the one I used to hide under my bed. The first page was smudged with old tears. A sketch of a solar system, the sun labeled me, every other planet just faint orbits around it. Back then, I'd drawn it because I felt alone. Now, I saw something else. Gravity. I was no longer revolving around their center. I had become my own. The Ainsley Foundation wasn't grand. It started in a 2-story brick building near the edge of town. Once a dental office, now reimagined with open windows and soft lamps instead of fluorescent ones. We didn't hang certificates. We hung stories. Each room was named after someone who had been forgotten. There was the Jenna room for my childhood friend who saw me when others didn't. The Martin wing, in quiet honor of the uncle who dared to speak. And in the center of the main hall, a glass case. Inside it, my old science notebook. Open to a page where I once scribbled, "Just because they don't see you doesn't mean you aren't bright." Teens came in slowly at first. Foster youth, runaways, kids who'd aged out and carried file numbers heavier than their own names. We didn't teach them to be successful. We taught them to be real, to write their names loudly, to take up space. One girl, Mia, once asked me why I looked so serious during group journaling. I smiled and said, "Because this is the first time in my life my story isn't being edited." She nodded, then handed me a sticky note with a single word on it. Staying. It wasn't long before the city took notice. A grant arrived. Then two. A professor from Columbia came to observe our creative therapy model. And one day, I was asked to speak at a conference about transforming legacy through silence. I almost said no, but then I remembered my father's words on that video. "You are my legacy, not my estate. You." So I stood before that room full of suits and titles and said, "I was once just a line in someone else's story. Now, I write my own chapters." No applause could match what I felt after. Just peace and weightlessness. I woke early the next morning. The city was still asleep, blanketed in that gentle hush just before sunrise. I stepped out onto the balcony of my apartment, modest, Sun warmed, mine. The sky blushed with streaks of lavender and orange, as if even the dawn knew something had changed. There was no parade, no celebratory banner. Just birds and breeze and the quiet steadiness of being okay. I made tea, Earl Grey, my father's favorite according to his letters. Sat at my desk by the window, opened a new notebook. This one had no old tears, no science scribbles, just empty pages, clean, patient, waiting. As the steam curled above my cup, I wrote the first words. Some relationships are roots, others are weights. I read it aloud, then smiled, not with triumph, but with release. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove I belonged. I was. And that was enough. I still didn't know everything, where my mother had buried her own wounds. Why my father chose silence, whether Caitlin would ever see beyond her bitterness. But I knew this. I didn't carry their shame anymore. I carried my name, Eliza Ainsley, a girl once forgotten, a woman now free. And as the wind picked up, lifting the corner of that fresh page, I whispered, "He didn't leave me money. He left me space to be." This story is not about revenge. It's about reclaiming the quiet parts of yourself that others tried to erase. For anyone who's ever felt like a placeholder in their own life, Eliza's journey is a reminder. You do not need their love to exist fully. You need yourself. See you again.